When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
Welcome to CIO Talk Radio with your host, Sanjog Gall. All comments, views, and opinions expressed on this show are strictly those of the host, guests, and callers. Here's Sanjog Gall.
Good morning and welcome to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. Today's topic is IT, that is working with business to lead customer innovation. And our guests for today's show are Brian Zimmerman, who's the Vice President and Chief Information Officer with Subaru of America. Good morning, Brian. How is life?
Life is great. Thank you for inviting me to the show, Joe.
Definitely. And we also have James Markarian, who is the Senior Vice President and CTO with Informatica. Good morning, James.
Hi, good morning, Sanjog. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning.
So you've been having long nights, James, in terms of dealing with the technology portion?
Yeah, the fun never stops. So it's a labor of love.
So this is a topic where we thought we should definitely cover it because we know innovation is becoming the very key why. Which is going to help companies sustain their growth and profitability, or in fact, in these economic times, just the very existence of an organization would be dependent on innovation. But then, when we want to innovate, we see businesses usually would want to take the front end, talk to the customers, or whatever other decisions have to be made about what we should innovate in, and then say, IT, take this, run with it, and execute and bring it back. Now, with that being done, how successful can this whole initiative be if the people who are working there getting secondhand knowledge, or maybe something is getting lost in translation? So Brian, what do you think?
Well, I think it's key that IT is involved up front in all projects. We don't claim to be the business experts, but one of the things that I think the IT expert should be, though, is a true business analyst. And if you're involved up front with the design, the process, and understanding, what the true requirements are, you can help the business come up with solutions that I believe could be implemented more simply and quicker. I mean, we're one of the only departments that kind of has the ability to see across all groups and understand the impacts. And when a business owner comes to you and says, just deliver this functionality, sometimes it's much harder to figure out how to integrate that into the environment versus if you had been involved up front. You probably would have had a lot better solution.
So it's not happening right now. And James, what do you think? Why is this not happening? It seems like it's one of the items on the wish list.
Well, let me first qualify my answer a little bit here for full disclosure, because as CTO at Informatica, since we're a technology company, I'm primarily focused on building solutions for our external customers. Now, I do work hand in hand with our CIO, Tony Young, in sometimes delivering some of our capabilities like software as service. So I'm going to give you a slightly different perspective on some of these questions, if that's okay. Is that okay, Sanjog?
Definitely.
Okay. So just to kind of take a step back real quick to what Brian mentioned, within R&D, we always try to drive our engineers as close to the customers as possible, precisely because of the fact that I think a lot of times we have individual engineers that can come up with innovative solutions to problems that not necessarily everyone sees. And if you can quote Plato this early in the morning, at least on West Coast time, necessity is the mother of invention, and you really need the engineers to see the necessity firsthand and kind of start the wheels turning, and then they can come up with great solutions to problems. Now, I think in some cases, when I apply this sort of restricted access to the customer in our context, it means that you have salespeople who own the customer relationships or feel they do, and they want to insulate the customers from, for whatever reason, from what happens behind the scenes here at Informatica. We can probably have an interesting discussion around what the pros and cons are about that. So I think there's some natural barriers, and we strive very hard to overcome those.
Now, don't you think that whether an enterprise leader, IT leader like Brian, or you being from the product or vendor community, you are all serving the customer at the end of the day? And if your innovation, whether you're building that a feature or a function in a product, or you're providing a capability to the frontline customer service representatives or XYZ in an enterprise environment that, for example, Brian does, you are serving customers. So innovation has to happen where all that innovation eventually creates value towards the customer experience.
Yeah, from my perspective, I couldn't agree more. And we've learned a lot from our customers, and have actually managed to grow the business based on innovations that we've derived from that customer interaction. And that's really kind of a source of pride for us in R&D, and actually a motivator that we use with the sales force to let us out there to talking to their customers. So when we entered into some new areas, these are new for Informatica, like things like data migration, which now which previously had been kind of no part of our business, and is now about 30% of our business, and is now kind of helping us revolutionize some of our customers around their data migrations, like customers like Nestle and DuPont and others, saving billions of dollars that we would have never been able to deliver these solutions had we not had that interaction with the early customers that said, "Hey, I really think you should offer a solution here."
Now, imagine that there was there's all this information that needs to flow from customer to every person, every constituent in an organization, may it be business or IT. If the right type of plumbing is not there, then you'd open up the tap to get that input, and you'll wait 2 days for you to get that input, or you'll have to start a pump of sorts to get that information out of there. Versus you have a plumbing which automatically, at any given time, on demand, keeps giving you feedback, and not only to the business community but also to the IT. Do we have such plumbing in place for most organizations? If not, is that by design, or is this just the unfortunate part? Brian?
Yeah, I think I think it, and again, I'll sound like a lawyer, it depends on the organization, but depending on where you are within the belief of utilization of customer data, and whether you feel comfortable to disperse that to all organizations is really the key. In the case of Subaru, we have the plumbing, concepts like dashboarding and those type of things when it comes to delivering some of this information real time to every department. We believe is critical. It's critical to know how your customers are reacting, what's going on in the market, both from in the case of automotive, auto sales, as well as parts, support, service. But again, every department really needs to understand that what they are working towards is satisfying the customer. And by having the tools and having the plumbing, as you put it, really gives the ability for everybody to say, okay, can I tweak that dial? Can I help that area sell more X, sell more cars, sell more whatever, support the customer, satisfy the customer's needs, improve quality of the product. Make sure that if a customer was in the dealership yesterday and decided he wanted a specific model, that we're doing everything in our power to deliver that car to that dealership as quickly as possible. And that is basically our focus. And by continuing to work on sharing that data across all of our departments, we believe will create success stories of the future.
Whether a company puts that plumbing in place, or even if they have the plumbing, do they turn the tap on, depends on the kind of culture or what type of expectation or perception do they have of how much value will that information be. And that is what makes one company different from another. So So, James, what is the culture that, in your view, should exist for any company which wants to be competitive and wants to grow, for them to not ignore this plumbing or not ignore the tap that exists, which you opened and you'll get all the info?
Well, we have a unique point of view here, and I think an especially appropriate one given the chaos in the economy presently. And we think that basically there are going to be data-driven enterprises, those that are kind of masters of the information and have been able to build this plumbing and trust their information. That's organizations, that's basically who's going to survive in this economy, because I think if you don't have this linkage between what's really going on in your business and the people making decisions at all levels of the organization, it's really unclear to me how anyone's going to survive. I'm sure that you look at even Subaru's results last year, the only company to grow in North America, I think about 0.8%, where everyone was declining. And you hear about Brian's emphasis on customer satisfaction, and you just have to believe that channeling all that information about the quality of their products and services is the key to making that happen. And we see that all the time in our companies. Leading edge companies that have invested over the years in their information architecture. Both with in Informatica certainly, and other elements to make that information at the point of decision available and trustable. And so I think data is the most important thing to enterprises right now.
Now, what is the undercurrent of this whole disconnect between the business community and the IT community? I mean, how many times do you see a water cooler conversation between the two groups? You talk about IT leadership or business leadership, as a peer group, or people at mid-management or people at operational level. We don't see that happening as much, and there has to be some sort of camping that is happening. And is this more the very culture of an organization again, or is it again, that we keep them separate all along, the way their responsibilities and roles have been defined in an organization? Brian, what do you think?
Well, that poses an interesting point. The age-old water cooler conversation, but it really ties into the whole concept of business relationships. I think first, you need to understand within your organization, within IT, the aptitude of your staff. Because certain people, you want to say that everybody can go out there and be a business partner and communicate to the business, but that's not necessarily true. Not everybody in IT has that aptitude and the ability to do that. So the first thing you need to do is understand your staff and understand what roles they can play, whether it's behind the scenes or the forefront. But then you have to build those relationships with the business so that those water cooler conversations can occur. And I'll give you a specific example of how we've been focused on developing those type of relationships. About 18 months ago, we looked at implementing a new warehouse management system in our warehouses for our replacement parts. As part of that program, though, we took the IT technical people, and actually I call my people business analysts, and I said, you know what, I want to put you out in the warehouse. I want you to do pick, pack, and ship for a week or two. I want you to understand the pain that the actual business people go through and work directly with those people. Now, we're not going to be experts in what they do by far. That's not, really our role, because these people do this every day in and out. But it gives, the business analysts the concept of, wow, this is what they do, now I get it. I can now then create solutions that can better support what they need to simplify their world. And when you start doing that and you start building those relationships, the person that was out in the warehouse sitting side by side, the business analyst sitting side by side with the warehouse person, now they will have water cooler conversations, because the person will call up and say, hey, I got this problem. You helped me resolve this before. Can you help me again? So again, there's a lot of different ways to really kind of address that specific issue. But, the example that I play is, put the business analysts out in the business for a time period so they really understand that function and that process and really try to gain the understanding.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back after these messages, and let's hear James' perspective on this in terms of what type of water cooler conversations that he would like to see happen between the business and the IT community at all levels. Please stay tuned.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
Now, Mrs. Johnson, before we close on your mortgage loan, I want to make sure you remember Mike.
Hi, you can trust me. I'm African American, just like you.
So, here's the low monthly payments and interest rates we promised, and here's where they triple.
The rest of this stuff is just here to make sure that we get your house when you can't pay us back.
What a lovely house.
Predatory lenders are never this easy to spot. Call us at 866-222-FAIR and protect yourself with the facts. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Fair Housing Alliance and the Ad Council.
There are so many challenges facing management today around the world. The new Management Network is here to provide practical insight and solutions for many of these challenges. Hosts Don and Bonnie Folk will explore topics designed to help you get the competitive upper hand, including organizational tools, personality and leadership, cutting-edge management tips, and much more. Join the new Management Network live every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Business Network. When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjog Gal.
Welcome back. So, James, what do you think could be happening in organizations where water cooler conversations at all levels between business and IT isn't happening? And also, one thing is there that IT leaders and business unit leaders may end up talking to each other because they need to at some point. However, the frequency and the quality of that could increase at the level, middle management and operational level that may be non-existent in many cases. So is this something which we are stuck living with, or there's a solution to this?
Well, I think there's a solution because we don't quite have that culture here at Informatica. Now we're a little bit smaller, I'm sure, on the IT side than large companies like Subaru. But for us, really it starts with both the CEO and the alignment that he drives between the groups. And so basically, we ensure that groups work together by creating common objectives that everyone is responsible for. An example recently within our company was driving a license compliance program. Now, normally you might think that this is something that's driven out of sales, it's driven out of legal, but actually the primary driver for this at Informatica was IT, because fundamentally, you're trying to evaluate the discrepancy between a customer's installation and what they've actually paid for, which in software can sometimes be a tricky thing. So IT was a critical part of this. They actually drove the project. They held and drove the weekly meetings, and they obviously had business's attention on this because business got quota credit for compliance revenue, so they were well motivated to let them into their accounts. And really, if it hadn't been for this alignment all the way up to the CEO level around driving compliance revenue, we may not have achieved that. Now, I think that we also plant the seeds for this early on when people get indoctrinated into Informatica. we put everyone through an elaborate new employee orientation where they commingle with everyone from every different function at the company from all around the world. And I have people telling me all the time that they have relationships that they formed in those early days at Informatica that they've maintained over years, despite the fact that they never thought they'd be working with this person, and it's paid off at some point in their career knowing people in other functions. So it is a cultural thing, but I think that the chief thing is that it's really top level alignment from the CEO on down.
So if you look at the places where you don't see this, camaraderie or fellowship happening, could this be due to the fact that they don't understand each other? We've seen many times business people say, I don't understand this geek language that you guys talk all the time towards IT. And IT people end up kind of cocooning themselves or just creating a mini group. And anybody who is from business, this guy doesn't understand technology, so I should not hang out with them. So, and relationships are not just formed when you just talk about business. Relationships are formed when you get to know about each other as an individual as well. So is one from Mars, another one from Venus? The two groups, Brian?
Well, one of the things I had mentioned earlier was understanding the aptitude of your business analyst, and whether they can communicate at the appropriate level and build, build those relationships. If you say the geek language. Well, if you have the aptitude to really want to understand what's going on in the business and drive that, you won't speak in that geek language. You will speak in business terms and communicate at the level of the business community. If you can't make that transition, and again, you might be in the wrong role and you should be behind the scenes maybe doing coding or some of the technology support, that is absolutely a must in every department. So you can say that, one's from Venus and one's from Mars, and I think there are cases where that is true, but every successful IT organization that I've ever worked in has had the people that, both people were from Mars or both people were from Venus, and they could communicate and build those relationships at the appropriate level with the appropriate language, so that success and business process reengineering can always continue.
James, have you ever come across in a predicament where you have a rock star who's a great programmer, the best technologist that you ever found, but that this person has the worst interpersonal skills that you've ever seen? And damn you keep that person, damn you don't.
I think I may have been that person. So I'd say in R&D you experience that every day. And I think the funny thing is that when you talk about this group as being from Mars, this group being from Venus, you can find that within IT or within R&D or within business. You have actually lots of different factions, if you will. Like if I look at R&D, we have product management, we have R&D, programmers, we have user interface developers, we have server developers. They're very different. We have documentation writers. So I never really accept as an excuse that groups are kind of fundamentally different and cannot find common ground. And so that's why I always hold out belief that as long as the groups are aligned in terms of their objectives, they can work it out. I think that what you see between either R&D and our customers or IT and business is that they're kind of optimizing for different things. One is focused maybe a little bit more short run on direct business effect, and IT and R&D sometimes we have to build for the future. We build architectures like we are now for our 9.0 version that'll probably last about 10 years. And so I'd like to optimize for the short run, but I'm going to be living with what we build for a very long time, and so I have to make trade-offs that sometimes make people unhappy, and I think that can manifest itself in kind of poor communication with our user community or with our sales guys. But you know what? They're predicated on our success too, and when we explain the trade-offs to these guys and offer a certain amount of transparency into our process, I think most people are actually pretty reasonable, and once they see the challenges that we go through, they're a lot more open-minded with respect to listening to the different trade-offs that we're looking at. And similarly, once we get a little bit more insight into what the issues that our customers are facing or the issues that our sales force is having, we also can become a little bit more amenable. So that communication and transparency is kind of the key to making it work.
Brian, so with respect to the quantum and frequency and the size of innovation that you may want to look at, and given that you have a directive to make the organization as agile, as effective as possible, then you may want to rip apart everything across the board and try to keep tweaking it, which also increases a lot of complexity, a lot of risks, etc. When you try to do that, business and IT both are involved, both have skin in the game. Then who turns out to be weakest link after a certain point? Do you see IT has the most scalable operational excellence in place that they can handle any amount of innovation, they can rip apart things all along, or is this a business which says, okay, I take as much innovation, you bring it on? So who chokes first here?
Well, first you have to step back and look at, the role of IT versus the role of the business. The role of the business is to focus on a specific area and focus on improving that area specifically. In the case of IT, we touch every facet of the business. And because we touch every facet of the business, it actually makes it a little bit easier for us to kind of drive that process, that change process that really requires, cross-departmental process review and re-engineering. That's not saying that the business aptitude is not there for it, but the specific business entity and the exposure may not be there for the business. So, as we look here at Subaru, we're one of the only organizations, if not the only organization, that really does cross over and understand, the whole business process from end to end. And if you think about any change that occurs, it's very rarely siloed within that specific business unit, even though the end result and or benefit may be specific to that business unit. It really has an impact a lot of times across other groups. And, our role is to ensure that, first of all, when we're looking at process and business change, that we address all the areas and we make sure that the communication channel across all areas occur because of the impact that can be there. So, in the end, again, I think IT may be more apt to do that, mainly because of the exposure that we do have across all areas. I don't want to say it's an aptitude or it's an ability. I just think it's part of the role that we play every day in our organization.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back, and also talk to James about the fact that when, in his organization or other organizations that you may have seen where the innovation is the latest buzzword, a lot of things are being planned and are being done with respect to innovation, how business and IT are both racing to make sure that they don't choke first so that they get the best out of this whole exercise. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Whether the market's up or down, or if you're looking to improve your portfolio, our experts are ready to talk to you. Call now toll free 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Voice America Business Network.
Have you found yourself overwhelmed or stalled, not getting the goals you dream of? Hear what the experts say about how you can break through. Solutions, systems, skills. Get your strategy on track and accelerate your business success. Join Linda Feinholz every Monday for The Spark Effect. Linda and her guests will show you and your team exactly how to grow your business further, faster, easier. The Spark Effect is heard every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Business Network.
Adding fractions is nothing.
For real?
Look, these are denominators. You multiply this one so that it's the same as that, then you add them up.
Man, that's easy.
Charles Bennett dreamed of returning to the old neighborhood as a teacher, but without money for college, only half of his dream came true. He's back in the old neighborhood.
Well, enough math. I gotta deliver these sandwiches.
Please support the United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste. A message from the UNCF and the Ad Council.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
From the boardroom to you, Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjo Gall.
Welcome back. So, James, when we are trying to, as a business, innovate and we want all constituents, running on full throttle, business or IT, which seems to be choking first?
Either one is capable of choking first. It just depends on the situation. So, if I relate this to the situation we face with our customers, basically you have kind of a mix of, old and new. And so we have kind of old, experienced customers that people like Morgan Stanley, Pfizer, Blue Cross Blue Shield, T. Rowe Price that run very large integration competency centers on Informatica. And they literally have hundreds of concurrent projects running at any one time, moving like 1 billion rows of data through Informatica a day. Now, when you go to them and talk about innovation, they say, when exactly am I going to, adopt that innovation? I have a business to run. Meanwhile, if you go to a new prospect, they're always clamoring for the latest and greatest technology, and they might not care about reliability, availability, serviceability like our older customers do. And so you're forced to, innovate very fast for these new customers. And so sometimes, we push a lot of product on our customers, on business, and sometimes they pull a lot of product for us. And it's just kind of a constant balance. I would say that in general, since we service lots of customers, my experience and my message to my boss is, they could always ask for more things than I can never deliver, right? So in the best of times, when they're really growing rapidly, I think that business does have the capability of outstripping, either R&D or IT, and so it's our job to kind of prioritize those initiatives, either across our customers or internally our IT group does it, across our internal business initiatives.
Now, eventually, whenever the innovation discussion happens and we come to some sort of a plan that this is what we're going to do, IT is the one who's going to be actually doing bulk of the work, or for that matter, all the work with respect to making this happen. And then if there is a disruption because of the very fact that you're trying to change things, there is also risk and complexity, then again, IT is left holding the bag. And then we are at the same time hoping business contributes and support us. And if they are always going to put the things back on us, what type of motivation do you think IT has motivation is a very relative thought. Some people are just go-getters. They love doing this, but other people will say, I'm not appreciated. Why should I keep doing this? Where business people want to get all the kudos because they're in the front end, they get all the appreciation, and we are the ones who are doing the work. That sentiment can flow within the organization very easily. So how do you think this can be prevented? And if it is existing, why is this in the first place? Brian.
I think, when you look at, credit, reward, risk problems, the benefit of any system implementation really surrounds kind of that business entity. So first of all, as an IT person, the group that really should and gets the credit should be the business side. If IT has built strong relationships along the way with those business partners, even though we may be doing 80% of the work to implement, notoriously, the business partner, when they are out there publicizing their positive results because this project was such a success, they will always mention IT saying, thank you for your support, you did a great job, we couldn't have done it without you. So the kudos come on the back end, which, I think is enough reward for the normal IT person to say, hey, I'm helping the business. Our goal has to be not necessarily worry about whether we're getting the pat on the back, but how are we helping the business, grow and in this case, tough economic times, survive. And really, that really should work. The inverse side, what happens when a project runs into problems? Is there finger pointing? Again, on the inverse side, I personally take total accountability for projects that fail. And I'll go and raise that and say, here's why it's happened. And again, 9 times out of 10, the other side will occur. The business will step up and say, and we were involved, and this is what happened. So, kind of power in numbers. If you built that relationship, the credits, the kudos, they'll come.
So, James, do you think the selflessness and the humility that Brian just demonstrated, and that's why he's where he is, does that percolate or does that exist in the IT organization as a whole?
I think for the most part it does because, I think everyone is fairly aligned to the success of the business. And while, fiefdoms do exist, everyone, has made some sort of decision that they're, working at a company for a reason and want to see it succeed. And I think that, now more than ever, we're kind of testing people's resolve, right? And so they have to be committed to the success of the company, or it's just not going to work. And so I do think that I actually think that the economy right now is going to present some interesting opportunities for IT to really shine, because I think there can be some IT-driven initiatives where you're trying to take cost out of the enterprise by really understanding either your parts spend in the case of an automobile manufacturer or other supply chain issues, and try to remove inefficiency from that process. And these are really kind of intensive, data-intensive, IT-intensive sorts of applications that do involve business, but start with information technology. Similarly, I think we're going to see a ton of regulation in this environment, and offering kind of transparency into business processes. While it does involve the business, but I think, again, offering kind of clean views of business processes and information are something that IT can contribute to. For example, keeping their executives out of jail from misreporting results, or exposing themselves to too much risk, which we could have benefited from before. So I think IT can take front and center, but I respect Brian's view that typically speaking, the business objectives are the objectives of the company, and we as either R&D or IT have to support those objectives. But we can shine every once in a while.
Now, given the way IT has been used to working, any project that you take, you have a very well-defined scope, and you've got things which you can almost predict, this is what I'm going to do at this phase and this phase and this phase. When it comes to innovation, it could be a very unstructured, it could be like a sandbox, you play with a different set of things. And in R&D, for example, which you had, you know that's what it has to be, unstructured. Does that change the effectiveness what an IT worker can bring to the table? And if at all we have to do innovation, can we ever have a planned, blueprinted innovation type of exercise? Is that the right approach towards innovation? And if that is possible, then that's fine, because business is also used to working in a structured fashion. But then if you give them totally, make them a loose cannon, come up with all sorts of ideas, you know what you're going to get. What do you think, James?
Well, I think you do really need to foster innovation, and this kind of goes back a little bit to an earlier discussion around finger pointing and blame. And I think that if you have a culture of blame, you cannot have an innovative culture, because you have to accept a certain amount of failure as the product of innovation. If you try new things, they might fail. Now, we do have to try them in intelligent ways, right? So, if somebody goes off on a lark, unsupervised, without inputs from customers or management, and fails, is that an acceptable failure? Probably not. Now, if they're responding to some input from a customer, they have a novel idea, goes through some sort of rigor, either through the CTO office or through engineering management, and we can offer sort of transparency into the process, and we use an agile development process here, and so either for new innovations or through for our core engineering process, things never go very far without some sort of sanity check. And our kind of motto here is fail fast. So the cheapest failure is the one that you do fast. So you better figure out very quickly whether something's going to work or not. So don't go off for 3 years and spend $10 million. But if you go off for a few months and spend a couple tens of thousands of dollars, taking a chance to really save our customers some money or save Informatica some money, that's a shot at innovation that I'll take any time.
Would you ever have a blueprint for the innovation or the R&D, or would you always do it more of an opportunistic view and or more of a sandbox style of innovation?
Well, for me, it's sort of both, right? So, being a little bit autocratic when it comes to innovation here, a lot of this stuff comes from me, and I like people to do what I want them to do. But, I'm benevolent as well, and so, a lot of times, the ideas do percolate up, and we do give our developers who are, super smart, super creative guys, latitude for inventing things, and we've seen some tremendous innovation come out of this. I'd say that our whole software as a service offering really was kind of a grassroots R&D effort for the most part. These guys figured out how to take our on-premise solutions and kind of host them in the cloud and support in this case Salesforce.com customers to integrate their data. And if we hadn't given these guys a lot of latitude in sort of how they were going to make that work, how they were going to kind of recraft the UI and other things, we'd probably still be sitting on the sidelines in that market instead of leading it.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back and talk to also get Brian's input on what type of innovation is usually good idea when it turns out to be enterprise IT-based innovation, and do you get that type of luxury and or a big budget, if you will, or sandboxing? And if you are working with a limited budget, what type of blueprinting you can do or should do, if you can at all? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Whether the market's up or down, or if you're looking to improve your portfolio, our experts are ready to talk to you. Call now toll free 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Voice America Business Network.
Mom? Dad? How long should I wait for you? Mom? If I'm at soccer practice. What if something happens? Will you come get me? Should I stay where I am and wait for you? Or go to Grandma's house since it's closer? Should we pick a place to meet?
There's no reason not to have a plan in case of a terrorist attack.
Mom, if you're not home, should we go to the neighbor's house? How do we keep in touch with each other if the phones don't work? Should I be worried how we all get home?
And some extremely good reasons why you should.
Can you tell me?
Everybody should have a plan. Take 5 minutes to talk about where you'll meet and how you'll get in touch with each other in an emergency. For other things you can do to be prepared, visit www.ready.gov. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Ad Council.
Looking for flexible ways to scale your IT efforts? Then visit www.avol.com today. Avol helps companies find the global IT talent they need to align their IT and business objectives. Whether it's hiring top IT leadership talent or building a reliable technology team, Avol delivers. To find out how Avol can help your company, visit www.avol.com or call 1-800-947-2832. Avol, delivering global IT talent. That's www.avol, A-V-V-A-L, avol.com. Visit today.
Self-leadership is more important than corporate leadership. In the hustle and bustle world we live in, we need to be reminded that in all failures and successes, we are the common denominators. Each week, let Daniel Gutierrez help bring you the tools you need to manage self-leadership, resulting in self-success. Make your mark in your industry. Make sure you listen to Right Here, Right Now. Brought to you by Waste Management every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Business Channel.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network.
You are listening to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. If you have a question or comment, call toll-free 1-866-472-5790. Now back to the show. Here's Sanjo Gal.
Welcome back. So, Brian, you want to share your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think, innovation in and of itself comes from every area of the business. It comes from internally IT resources. It can come from senior management at IT. It can come from senior management in the business, and at every level within the business. I mean, I think the reality is, and James mentioned this earlier, is how do you deal with it, and how long do you go after the ideas? If you think about every idea, one of my comments have always been, or mottos in my career has been, the only bad idea is the one you don't listen to. And shame on you. You may not say yes to all the ideas, but if you're truly listening and trying to understand the idea and following up to the point where you're talking to that person and saying, hey, we've tried that before, and here was our results, or right now, that won't fit into kind of the direction we're going. I think people will still continue to bring those ideas to the forefront, as well as, hey, that's a good idea. Let's try that, but let's minimize our risk. Let's try it. Let's move forward with it a little bit, and 30 days. If it does not pan out, we're going to stop. So I think it's really a lot of it's about communication, how you handle it, and how you respond to it. If a senior person just says no, you're just going to stifle the creativity and the ideas to be brought up to the forefront. The people in the field, the people in the trenches are really the ones that really know what's going on and really can be the most creative to help the business grow.
In your view, who should own innovation when it is basically going to be, hopefully, business and IT together, playing in the same sandbox?
I think, ownership is a funny term, but I think, as I mentioned earlier as well, we do in IT really see the broad picture across all departments. So even though an idea that comes in, or innovative idea comes in, and it may not work in one department, from that department that it was suggested, it may work in another department. So a lot of times the channel and the funnel of the ideas have a tendency to go through IT, and sometimes we have the ability to take those ideas, even though they may not work in one area, and move it and recommend it and try to implement it in other areas. So it's not necessarily the case that's the way it works in all organizations, but in our case, when it comes to some of these ideas, the funnel seems to come our direction.
What do you think, James? Where do you see the ownership should lie? One is, of course, you representing the vendor community. You'll have your product managers or people who are out there listening to those individuals and seminars, etc., and bring back a list of ideas that could be possibly played with. But then, are they the ones who should own it, or eventually somebody who is non-IT, the non-execution people, should also have some skin in the game, that if they're coming with some crazy ideas, you're not supposed to be just left holding the bag if something doesn't turn out?
My general observation is that customers, either internal or external, are great drivers of requirements and great illustrators of problems, and typically not a direct source for the innovation behind the solution to that problem. So it's our job to kind of synthesize all the things that we hear from large numbers of customers. And we do have a development process that even puts our engineers out there talking directly to customers in very open-ended ways about the problems they're seeing so that we can come up with these solutions. But ultimately it is, R&D via the product managers, and ultimately at Informatica we have a product strategy committee that I chair, where we do kind of finally bring the groups together, and our CEO sits on this council as well, and we kind of decide what we're going to do. So, and he's kind of an R&D guy at heart. So I'd say that R&D ultimately does kind of own the innovation, but we don't own the entire sort of stimulus for that innovation. That's like every part of the company.
One last question, Brian. You are only as good as your crew. What kind of example would you want to set for them, or other leaders in their respective organizations should set for them, so that there's a lot of communication between business and IT? And what would you suggest that corresponding your counterparts in business should do, so that the other people follow your suit?
My motto, first of all, is communicate, communicate, communicate. If you can communicate yourself to both your respective teams as well as across the management organization, and show what we're trying to accomplish in support of the business from the near term, the midterm, and the long term, as well as the management team with their respective departments doing the same back across to the IT organization and other areas about what are you trying to accomplish from your business units. It goes a long way to say, hey, we can develop an organization that will work together. Setting the example to put yourself out there, to really focus on that communication, I think is key. I also think, simple things like work ethic, being in the office, spending time with your people, even though, as the CIO, I always say I live in this ivory tower, but I'm out there on the floor with my people, talking to them, developing a rapport with my people, which I think is always key, that everyone is seen as a human being, not as, well, he's the big boss, I really can't talk to him. And having that open door policy where people feel comfortable that, hey, I got a problem, or I have an opportunity, or I have an idea. Would you mind talking to me? My response is absolutely. Come see me. So management by example always works and goes a long way.
James, 30 seconds. What do you think?
Yeah, I think for me it's just, you have to prove every day your relentless focus on customer success. And when we are out there designing our new versions of our products, I'm on the road with our product managers and developers, in the same cars, in the same customer meetings for, days and sometimes weeks on end. And they see how committed I am to getting customer input into our products. And, we cite these examples, daily in our meetings about the experiences that we had in the formative stages of our product. So it's really just leading by example and demonstrating, the traits that I want my team to have.
On behalf of the show and our listeners, I'd really like to thank you, Brian and James, for sharing your thoughts about how IT and business can work together and lead customer innovation.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on the show, and we'll look forward to maybe having an opportunity in the future again.
Great.
Yeah, thanks, Sanjog, and thanks, Brian. I learned a lot myself today.
Thank you again. Now, in this tough competitive business environment, as we see, innovation is what we can leverage to stay ahead and at least sustain growth and profitability for our businesses. So IT can help with innovation, however, should not be just treated as an execution arm. In many cases, that's what is happening. To get the best results, IT should be involved at all levels in customer interaction and needs assessment along with business counterparts. This requires blessing from the top management so that everybody knows what's going on, and also some additional effort to ensure that customer bases, the business users and unit leaders see IT crew and leaders as partners who can make them successful versus just being, order takers. Is IT being given opportunity to front-end the customers and get direct input in your organization? Please let us know your feedback to views@ciotalkradio.com. That is views@ciotalkradio.com. Thank you again for listening to CIO Talk Radio. This is Sanjog Aul, your talk show host. Till next week, take care and God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to CIO Talk Radio. To learn more about the show, please visit www.ciotalkradio.com. Join Sanjog Aul next Wednesday at 9 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Pacific for another hour of CIO Talk Radio.